This video has already blown up Google Trends 2025. Why? You'll never believe what she hid in her phone. Hidden camera. Reddit post with 1M likes. The judge who knows too much. Why do 9 out of 10 women in the US watch this? Digital watch, how the chats inner/infidelity revealed the change with my husband's brother. Technomestion 2025, the smartphone that became a lie detector. You don't even know how it works. Judge Bomb, why their TikTok single has become the #1 lie. It's not just a story, it's your worst nightmare. Why Dines at Patello's has become the #1 story. How did the Tiffany ring become a symbol of betrayal? Click the bell now, or your girl will know the finale before you do. P.S. The algorithms already know your secrets. Are you ready to find out what happens next?
Chapter 2. The weeks following Mark's discovery that his wife, Sarah, had cheated on him with his brother, David, became a relentless descent into hellish spirals. Everything he'd known collapsed like a castle of brittle glass, leaving him exposed in a frozen wasteland. The divorce, like a hurricane, ripped out the roots of his life, hurling him into chaos where every morning began with a knife twisting in his heart. Gone were the days of returning home to the warmth of her lips, to laughter that chimed like wind chimes in a summer breeze. Now he faced a haunted apartment where walls whispered of infidelity, and legal papers multiplied like poisonous mushrooms after rain. He stood amidst the wreckage of a dream, clutching shards of forever that cut his palms to bleeding. How could they? The question seared him like white-hot iron. Every dawn, Mark woke from nightmares where their bodies merged in a dance of betrayal, David's laughter echoing like a funeral bell. He tried shutting his eyes, but the visions haunted him even in daylight. Her fingers, once tender against his cheek, now clawed at his brother's shoulders. His own flesh and blood had become his enemy. Depression ensnared him tighter than a spider's web. He lost everything, his job, after his boss, wrinkling his nose in disgust, handed him a brown envelope with the words, "You've become unreliable." His home, a real estate agent hauled his belongings onto the sidewalk like trash. Even his car was repossessed for debts, leaving him to wander the city where every cafe, every park echoed with her hollow promises. But the worst was yet to come. His family, his mother, whose hands once healed his childhood scrapes, now screamed into the phone, "You need to forgive them. David, he's your brother." His father stayed silent, while his sister texted, "Send money." Sarah's struggling. Betrayal had mutated into a virus, poisoning even the souls he'd called family. One night, shivering in the backseat of his former car, Mark stared at a photo on his phone, the three of them at a picnic, Sarah laughing with her head thrown back, David winking at the camera. The passion he'd once mistaken for brotherly love now burned in his chest as hatred. He hurled the phone against the wall, watching the glass shatter into 1,000 shards, a perfect mirror of his life. But in that darkness, a spark ignited. "No," he whispered, clenching his fists. "I won't be their victim." Like a demon summoned from the abyss, Mark began gathering evidence, Sarah's texts with David, where "sweetheart" morphed into "my love," hotel receipts under her name, even security footage from their apartment lobby, frames of them kissing as they hurried into the elevator. Each document became a brick in the wall of his vengeance. Then the letter arrived. Sarah's lawyer proposed an amicable settlement, Mark would surrender everything, and they'd forget about his aggression. He laughed, a bitter, jagged sound, as he tore the envelope to shreds. "You'll learn what aggression really means," he hissed, staring at the sunset staining the sky the color of bruises. At a cafe where Mark stopped to warm up, he bumped into Lisa, Sarah's friend. She tried to smile at his gaunt face. "Mark, you understand. Love's unpredictable." He stood, knocking over his chair. "Love?" His voice rang like a blade. "Ask your friend how much her unpredictability costs. Or ask my brother. He counts every penny." Lisa paled and fled, while Mark tasted the sweetness of revenge for the first time in months. Late that night, wandering the waterfront, he spotted a couple, a man hugging a woman, murmuring in her ear. Mark turned away, but then heard her laugh, too loud, too hollow. Pretense, he thought. They're all the same. But suddenly, the woman shoved the man. Did you think I didn't know about your affairs? Her voice trembled, yet held power. Mark froze, watching her walk away, chin lifted high. That moment became a drop of hope in his ocean of despair. Family. Those whose hands should have lifted him from the abyss became shadow daggers plunging into his back. Mark, help. His mother's voice rang with false concern. You won't leave David without support, will you? His father stayed silent, while his sister sent a voice message, Sarah's pregnant. They need money. Betrayal smelled metallic, like blood on snow. They didn't see his shattered soul, only a wallet to turn inside out. Like Martin from New World Depression, he stood on the edge, feeling the ground crumble beneath him. This wasn't a crisis, it was an apocalypse of trust. He lost everything. His job, the office that once praised him now slammed its doors, handing him a box of belongings. You've become unpredictable. His home, the walls that once held whispers of love now stood silent, boarded up with court seals. Even the car where they'd kissed in the rain was towed away, leaving Mark stranded on the roadside of life. His world narrowed to a night shadow where he wandered like a ghost from a Suicide Boys music video, broken but not defeated. But deep in the heart of hell, a spark of rage ignited. Mark gathered evidence like an alchemist turning pain into weapons. Sarah's texts with David, my love, he'll never suspect, voice notes of his brother laughing, he's too naive. Every word became a nail in their coffin. His fury boiled like lava in Koe Wetzel's track, Depression and Obsession, where madness dances with hope. At 3 a.m., hunched over a cracked laptop screen in a hostel, Mark stumbled on a photo, a family dinner where David raised a toast to loyalty. He erupted, tearing a page from his notebook and scrawling, your lies will be your gallows. He mailed the note to his parents' empty house. Let them tremble. In the courtroom, Mark stood like a titan in ruins. Sarah's lawyer screeched, he's the aggressor. But when Mark revealed the evidence, footage of their kisses in the elevator, receipts from the Tenderness Hotel, the air froze. The judge slammed the gavel, adultery proven. Victory smelled of gunpowder and freedom. Outside, Mark breathed deeply. His honor blazed like a sword forged in hell. Yes, he'd lost his family, his home, his past. But he'd gained something greater, himself. His story was no longer a fall, but a phoenix rising. After the trial, Mark sat in the emptied office where his financial triumphs once took shape. The walls, draped in gray velvet, now felt like a shroud. He dragged a finger across the dusty desk, leaving a trail like a scar on the skin of time. Goodbye, old me, he whispered, clutching the court verdict. But in his chest smoldered a spark, not of hope, but ruthless fire. David and Sarah wouldn't stop. They'd pursue him like snakes, poisoning every fresh start. He found Sarah's address. Not her new penthouse, but the very apartment where they'd once picked out wallpaper. Lilac or lavender, she'd laughed back then. Now the windows glowed yellow, foreign, hostile. Mark lurked in the shadows, watching a limousine pull up. Out stepped Sarah, with a stranger in a $10,000 suit. His fingers dug into his palm as she laughed, tucking a strand of hair behind the man's shoulder. A scheme? Yes. Her cunning was sharper than he'd imagined. David hadn't just stolen his wife, he'd built an industry of betrayal. Mark returned home, if a bunker of cardboard boxes could even be called that. On the table lay files, transcripts, photos, even a recording of David's conversation with a corrupt lawyer. Let Mark pay alimony. He's a fool, he'll believe it, his brother snickered. In that moment, rage became fuel. He wouldn't just destroy them, he'd turn their sins into ash for them to choke on. His revenge became surgical, precise as a scalpel. Sarah dreamed of opening a boutique. Mark leaked her debts to investors. David bragged about his new Porsche. A week later, the car was impounded after drugs were accidentally found in the glove compartment. Every strike was poetry of vengeance, its verses written in the tears of those who'd laughed at his pain. But the crescendo came the night he sent them a letter. Not an email, a physical one, sealed in an envelope stamped from the abyss. Inside lay a photo of their first date and a note: "Your happy ending will cost you more than you stole. Wait for it." Now he stood on the threshold of a new life. In one hand, a contract with a company that valued his ruthless logic. In the other, a flash drive with data that could bury David in prison. But a question hung in the air like the stench of smoke after a fire: who are you now? Avenger? Strategist? Ghost? The answer came on the wind. He tore up the contract, tossing the shreds into a trash bin. His future didn't belong to corporations. Opening his laptop, he dialed a new client, a hotel chain owner who hated David even more than he did. "Your move." "I'm your sword," Mark said, watching the sunset bleed across the sky.
What happens if he finds something he wasn't looking for? This is not just a story. It's a chain that knits everyone together. If you think you know the ending, you're in for a shock. Algorithms have already started recommending this video to those who have been searching for how to save a marriage and digital traces of infidelity. Are you next? Click the color now to be the first to see Mark's viral post turn into a weapon against himself. Leave a comment on whose turn is it. PS, see you in part 3 of the story.
I drift in your shadow, your breath keeps me still. The night wraps around us, bends time to my will. In dreams we are endless, no space in between. A place made of whispers where silence can sing. Take me to sleep where the stars never end. Lost in the rhythm, we don't have to pretend. Floating in waves where the night will defend. Take me to sleep where the stars never end. Hands, 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 hands. Every beat pulls me deeper inside. Your touch is a current, a velvet tide. Oh, wake me now, let this feeling abide. In your arms, I'm forever.